Okay, so let's get started. We're here to interview Becky Plotner. As you guys know, she is a board certified naturopathic doctor through the American Naturopathic Medical Certification Boards. She's kind of a big deal. She's also a GAPS certified practitioner and a doctor of pastoral sciences. And Dr. Natasha McBride deemed her the GAPS expert in 2017. She currently helps to certify GAPS practitioners and GAPS coaches like myself. And we're so thankful to have you here, Becky, to ask you these questions and if you can help us with our kiddos with the JIA that we're all struggling with.
Love it.
Yes. So is there anything that you wanted to add before I just
This situation with JIA can be all across the board. And if you've got a deeper damage situation in your microbiome, it can be very, very, very severe. And it takes a very long time for it to recover. And you can be very hypersensitive to anything that moves you in the better form, because the more damage you have in this kind of a situation, the more your detoxification channels are shut down. So you're doing all this effort to make your body better, but the toxins can't actually leave. So you end up doing some time where you're spinning your wheels and you have to go very, very slow when that's very difficult to do, especially if you've got an older child. So it can be very, very, very slow going, but I've never seen a case that does not get better.
I repeat that. Oh, you've said that to me before, and I tell people that all the time because I think it's the most encouraging thought because it's
Mm.
chronic and it's scary. And also hearing Monica, talking about, sometimes you just need to start with literally like a pin drop of stock. Like people are that damaged and that sensitive, and
Mhm.
um, just to know that this is the way and with the help from practitioners and coaches, they can get through. So I got someone to admit. Okay. So with gaps in the protocol, there's just a handful of like supplements that Dr. Natasha McBride recommends. Um, outside of that, is there anything that you feel in your practice that would, I mean, I know every single person is going to be individual, but are there any that are, because I can't, as you know, I can't recommend anything, but is outside of the GAPS protocol supplements, is there anything that you find would be a good addition for children with JIA?
Hmm. Yeah, so the things that are generally recommended outside of food that are really still food in terms of supplements are going to be things like fermented cod liver oil, iodine, maybe omega-3s or evening primrose, which also falls under that category. But outside of those things, there is something that I see that can move people much faster forward, and that's a Rife machine. In terms of Rife technology, this goes back hundreds of years. Nikolai Tesla is the one who uncovered this in the very, very beginning. And he basically had the technology to do cell phones back in the 1800s. And Royal Rife came on board and he started studying different frequencies. And you can basically look at this from the angle of if you took a block of wood and you put a tuning fork in that block of wood, and then you put another tuning fork about 8, 10, 12 inches away, and you hit the one tuning fork, then stop it. The other one is making the noise because it travels, the frequency travels. So he was actually studying these frequencies with a light tube, and the frequencies would go into your body. So he basically found that, for example, if you have a pancreatic fluke in your pancreas, you could send a specific frequency, which actually comes from the 9-volt battery. That's a very low frequency, and you can hold on to little rods and it would send the frequency through your body, kill the pancreatic fluke. And then lo and behold, people who had diabetes no longer had diabetes because diabetes is a disease of the pancreas. So it's one of those things where he kept studying it and studying and studying it. And he found bones have a specific frequency, parasites have a different, this parasite has a different frequency than this parasite, yeast has a different frequency, collagen has a different frequency, inflammation has a different frequency. So when you put these kind of things on the body and you put these types of frequencies through the body can greatly reduce the inflammation. So now the body can actually heal and recover a little faster. And you can do things like you can do frequencies for liver, which can get clogged up with toxicity. So now you're less toxic, you can get better. You can do frequencies for detoxification. Royal Rife really, he had found like a million frequencies that were healing people. They were getting cured, straight up getting cured. So, of course, the FDA came in, they raided him, and they took all of his stuff. They took 9 trunks of his things, and he was left with absolutely nothing. And there's a guy that's actually tracked those 9 trunks. They're not even in America anymore. They're in over in Europe somewhere, and they don't even report. He went to that museum. What's it doing in a museum? He went to that museum to see if he could, have access to looking at them. And they're like, we don't have 9 trunks. We have 3 trunks. That's a misprint somehow. So all these things have been just kind of brushed under the rug. So he was actually curing things readily with these types of frequencies. It's something that I see helps people. If you're not moving forward, it can really help tremendously with you moving forward. I mean, there's people that they won't change their food. They would rather give you their child than change their food. And they can add in something like a Rife frequency technology and see vast improvements enough that things can get better slowly down the road. If you're doing food together with the chelation, together with iodine, together with the Rife type machine technology, that's the best thing that I absolutely see. In terms of the Rife machines, like I said, you can get light tubes, and there's many different light tubes. You can do the violet ray, you can do the GB4000, which is a MOPA. That's actually the best ranked light tube machine. It's like $5,000. My favorite one is the sound wave frequency machine, which if you go onto gapsprotocolhelp.com and click on shop, you'll see it there. It's the Wellness Pro Plus machine. It's way less expensive. It's like $3,500 instead of $5,000. And the body's cells are 60% water. So when you put this frequency into the body, the cells hold on to that frequency much better. It's a conductor. And then when you no longer are doing the machine, you're actually holding that frequency for 3 more days. So it's one of those things where we see phenomenal results. I actually broke my rib and put the machine right on top of my rib, had zero pain. Did the treatment 3 times during the 6 weeks of my rib healing, zero pain after I put it on. It's so phenomenal in terms of how it can help your body to move things forward. So that's definitely something. And if you just go to, if you're like, well, this is new for me, I want to learn more about it, you can go to gapsprotocolhelp.com, click on the machine. There's a whole bunch of teachings there. Royal Rife, Nikolai Tesla, all kinds of things. And then there's a bunch of teaching specifically on that machine that people can learn more. But then there's another thing, and that's deep breathing, because deep breathing is very, very powerful in terms of promoting rest and digest. It literally puts your body into the parasympathetic state where your body rests and digests. Think eating a pear under a tree. Parasympathetic nervous system functions are things like your stomach churning food, your digestive tract processing things through, you having intimate relations with your spouse, whereas the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. Think of you're just about to get into an accident and your response is you take in that shallow, quick breath, your whole body lights up. You can't digest your food in that state. You can't feel anything if you're being intimate with your husband at that time. You can't process things that are naturally resting, digesting, repairing. And unfortunately, a lot of us today, I don't know if it's because of dirty electricity or if it's because of other things that are going on in our environment, if we're in the constant go, 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 go mindset of our lives, it is one of these things where we are constantly shifting more into this sympathetic nervous system, which causes our bodies to constantly be in that just about ready to get in a car accident state. And now you can't heal and recover. You can't poop. You can't just, things just don't work. And they build up in terms of tension in your body. There's actually a guy by the name of James Nestor. James Nestor, and I actually have put together a ton of different videos and teachings that I can just send you an email of all those teachings that you can send out to your people. And James Nestor's things are in there too. He's actually a research journalist who was going to do this research project. He lives in California. And as he was on his way, he actually saw this gentleman standing there at the ocean and he was doing this, deep breathing. And then all of a sudden he dives into the water and like disappears. And he thought to himself, did I just see somebody commit suicide? And then the guy finally comes up and he starts asking him. 6 minutes later, he comes back up out of the water. Turns out this guy is diving with the whales. He's been doing it for years, but he started talking about breathing. So James started researching for the next 4 years of his life breathing techniques and how well they do for your body. And he basically started doing different experiments. He had people just nasal breathe. They taped the mouth. They just nasal breath for 10 days. And then they did the opposite where they just mouth breathed for like 10 days. They plugged the nose. And exactly what you think would happen happened. They had higher heart rates, mouth breathing, higher blood pressure, higher anxiety, less sleep, more snoring, more anger, more outbursts. Their brain wasn't functioning well. And then the exact opposite happened with the nasal breathing. He took it even further and did different, like breathing out of just one nostril or the other nostril, and found they did different things in your body, which your body actually adjusts to those kind of things naturally. It will shift to one nostril or the other nostril, depending on what your body actually needs at the time. That's a normal thing. There's one gal that studied different functions. Like she studied when people check emails, they actually start breathing in an apnea type state. She actually started calling it email apnea because you're not relaxed. So anytime you're doing emails, concentrate on the breath work so that your body doesn't go into that space. He actually studied many different people and found athletes and said, let's just exercise to the point that we can nasal breathe without it being difficult. And they did that and they found that so first off, they would go slower and they could do less getting started. But then in the long run, they ended up going further, had more endurance, could do more. He found that if you breathed in for a 5.5, out for a 5.5 count, you actually increased your blood oxygen levels by 5.5 liters. And there was one gentleman that he actually tracked that was a marathon runner who actually nasal breathed the whole marathon and his heart rate never changed out of his resting heart rate state. So when you are constantly pushing your body into this parasympathetic state, it can naturally repair different damages, calm the whole system down, and function much, much better. And with a child, if it's a very small child, you can actually just sit there with that small child reading a book. And if you hold that child next to you or you're there with that child and you take a deep breath, that child's going to take a deep breath. And if you keep breathing in that way, the child will follow with you. You can do that with an autistic child who's not coherent as to what's actually going on for what you think. And then if you've got a child who's actually cognitive available to do this themselves, they can just listen to these talks and do it themselves and get further down the road to their body recovering because you're forcing your body into this relaxing repair state. And it's something that the more we do it throughout the day, the more your body can actually recover easier. So first thing in the morning when you wake up and you're laying in bed, that's a given. Last thing before you go to bed and you're laying there, that's a given. If you happen to wake up in the middle of the night, that's a given. And then anything that you do on a regular basis throughout the day, make those your times that you're breathing. So, for example, if you were like an Uber driver or a taxi cab driver, anytime a new fare comes into your car, or anytime you get in your car and start up your car, that's your time that you trigger yourself to breathe. Or if you're a mom who's cooking a lot, every time you're in your kitchen, that's your time where you're breathing. And you can listen to some of those videos and talks that teach you to remind you. And the more you do it throughout the day, the better off your body's going to function. Your body actually makes cortisol, which is a hormone that is your happy hormone. And a lot of times when we are in this sympathetic state, it's off kilter, and we're either too high or too low, which both are bad. Cortisol is your Goldilocks hormone. You want to be just right. So, in terms of breathing, it naturally fixes the cortisol levels for you. When you have cortisol that's off, it's going to have your body hold on to visceral fat, belly fat. I had one gal who was very, very strict stage 2 for many, many years. I think it was around 7 years. She could not lose weight and she was very ketogenic. Nothing would help. She was on the right amount of thyroid and iodine. She started doing breathing techniques, and after 3 days, she lost 2 pant sizes.
Oh, wow.
It is very, 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 very powerful in terms of how your body can function. And that's free. So there's a lot of things that you can do that can help tremendously so that your body can start flowing and working in the proper state. When you are shifted into that sympathetic nervous system state, your body knows it's in crisis mode. It's preparing and holding on. You're lost in a desert, no food, starving, can't function. You're ready to be in an accident. Don't focus on processing food and repairing the body. Protect the stuff in the body that needs protection, like your heart, your liver, your lungs. So your body cannot repair if you're in that state. So the more you push yourself into the parasympathetic, the more your body can actually recover and do things in the most natural state that it can. It's very powerful.
Mhm. Now it's interesting you said that when we breathe this way, our children, if they're, with us, will naturally breathe this way. So then that, to me, it goes to say that if we're in fight or flight trying to heal them, they're kind of naturally going to be in that state too, right? So
Yeah,
doing it for ourselves.
one of the very first things that they teach the medical community when they're in medical school, ER doctors, what's the first thing they're going to say when you come in on a gurney and everything, you've got arms hanging off and blood everywhere. You're okay. You're okay. It's okay. They don't get riled up. So
Mhm.
if somebody's in pain, if somebody just trips and falls and we know that's causing more inflammation and hurting them, it's okay. Everything's good. Did you hurt the floor? Whatever you can do to relax, calm the situation, because then their body can continue to heal and recover, that has a huge impact. You are right.
Okay, so that makes sense. We really need to be, as doing these things for ourselves, like they say, put the mask on yourself first, and then you can help other people.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be honest with you. You can see this kind of thing in their eyes. Every single mom that I've had in my office where the child is just not getting better, and we've been doing things for a very, very long time, FPIES is not getting better, anaphylaxis is not getting better. Every time I look in the child's eyes, you can see the nerve ring in their eye. Do you know what that looks like?
I think so.
So it's if you look in the iris, which is the colored part of the eye, if you dropped a pebble in a pond and it left those ripples in the water, you can actually see the ripple marks on the outer side of the iris. And it's literally because the child is under or the person is under so much stress that they're inside their body doing this and it's actually popping the iris because that nervous system is off. Now, this is not necessarily this person in this situation. It could be genetically handed down to them from generation to generation, and they may never get rid of it. But a lot of times, when you've got a situation where somebody's in an acute state, anaphylaxis, FPIES, very severe. The mom's in a, I want to help you, I want to, but that anxiety then goes on to the child. Anaphylaxis is a perfect situation. I'm afraid he's going to die. We have to scrub every single inch of this airplane seat because I don't know who sat in here before my child. Well, that child will take on that anxiety. But instead, if you've got the, it's okay, boy, we're doing a great job. This is going to be the cleanest chair in the airplane for the next person that comes. And what a gift you're giving to other people. If you keep it on that kind of a level, it really helps their body to relax and repair. Whereas I've actually seen that exact situation of an anaphylactic child to nuts, and the mom was very anxious, and he did have the popped nerve rings in his eye, and his liver actually started to shut down. He was turning yellow, very yellow. And of course, it got turned back around, but that calm state is very valuable. Think about somebody who starts to yell at you.
Hmm.
What's your immediate reaction inside your body? Yeah. And you can't think. You can't relax. You can't be who you're supposed to be. But if you're calmed and encouraged, and this is normal, this is what is supposed to happen at this time, because that is what's supposed to, whatever's happening, that's what's supposed to happen at that time. And then the body can go down the road and you can support it according to what it needs.
Keelan said, thank you for telling her that. Her son has a severe peanut allergy and she needed that reminder.
Mm.
Thank you
Not an
so
easy
much for that.
situation.
No, thank you
Is
so much for that. Not all of us can do the Rife machine, of course. We can't just go run
Mhm.
out and buy one. Maybe are there people who do it where we could go to a
Yeah, you can check with local practitioners and see if they have one in their office. So I have one at my office.
right?
If you happen to be going to the Western Eye Price Conference this
Mhm.
coming weekend in Knoxville, I'm going to be there at the GAPS booth and I will have my machine and people can come and do free treatment so you can experience
Oh,
what
wow.
it feels like.
Very nice, very nice. So another question that I have is about all of the testing and stool samples and saliva tests. And what is your thought on that? Because I'm just a coach, and I can order tests, but I often tell my moms, unless we hit a wall, I'm not really into them. But we want to know, as a practitioner, how much do you put into these tests?
You know, that's a really great question. I'm not a fan either. I actually know several people who have worked at labs and they've actually quit their job because they could not keep doing it morally, ethically. There's a lot of, you got to think about the person that's at the lab doing the test. It's a lot of push it out, get it through, push it out, get it through. I've had many people turn in stool samples with visible worms in the stool sample, and it comes back negative. No worms, no parasites. I mean, at least 9 people have done that. In terms of other testing, medical tests are designed to find an answer to prescribe you a medicine. I'm not going to do that anyways.
Mhm.
Other tests are really showing us what our body's telling us anyways. You literally could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on tests and get nowhere. And
Mhm.
it's spinning a lot of your wheels. It's wasting a lot of your resources. It's causing you a lot of stress. I'm not a fan of going and waiting an hour to get into your appointment that you were there on time for, and then not coming out with results. I've got a lot of people that come into my office with a binder full of 3 inches of tests that it's idiopathic, which means we don't know what's causing it. So it's one of those things where it can cause more problems. Plus, a lot of tests do actually cause problems. Let's look at the colonoscopy. I know nobody's doing the colonoscopy, but it's a perfect example. For every 1,000 tests they do, colonoscopies they do, one person is saved. For every 1,000 they do, one person dies
From it.
from the colonoscopy.
Mhm.
For every 1,200 they do, one person is saved because they found cancer.
Mhm.
For every 300 they do, so 300 lows, somebody is scarred permanently from the colonoscopy.
Mhm.
And that you can do different, like the thyroid panel of testing is notoriously incorrect 40% of the time. You have a blaring thyroid issue and you get tested and it's fine, but it's not fine. But you just spent, and that's another thing. You just spent $360 on that test. Any test that you're doing in a medical doctor's office, let me just give you a little heads in of what's going on there. That's a big money maker for them. It's a big money maker for their bottom line, and it's also protection against them getting sued. That's why they're pushing the tests. In terms of the money makers, any one of these tests, just add a zero. If you go get a vitamin D test, it's $12 for the test. They charge you $120. If you go get a thyroid panel testing, it's $36 for the test. They charge you $360. It's a huge money maker. No wonder they're pushing the tests. Plus, then you cannot sue them because the test said we were following the test. So,
Mhm.
in terms of what do, I would just follow the protocol step by step by step, looking for responses. If you are using chelation or you're using probiotic foods and you get a lot of yeasty reactions, it's just your body saying it's too much. You need to go slower. Same thing with beneficial foods that build your system. If you're putting in yolks and you got a lot of die off, it's because it's building up that good flora, killing off the bad, and now it can't get out fast enough. Listening to the body's symptoms and the guides are actually the best route to go. I actually asked Dr. Natasha this question one time, and she actually said the only people that she really encourages to get testing is if they have a lot of money and the husband's not on board and they need to prove it to the husband that this is the situation.
Mhm.
So I'm not really a big fan,
Okay.
but you can
Okay.
do whatever you want to do.
Right.
You know, there's,
Mhm. Yes, I'm partnered with Great Plains Labs.
mhm,
I've
me too.
ordered a few, but I feel the same way you do, that the
Hmm.
results send us on a wild goose chase, because now we're
Yeah.
looking at what the test says, rather, and it's taking us off the main thing. Let's make the main thing, just keep on healing. And a lot of it, we may not know exactly what's going on in the body at every moment. every cell, and but just trusting and knowing that we're nourishing ourselves and nourishing
Yeah.
and listening to those cues in the body, pull back, do more,
Yeah.
detox. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
partnered with about 7 different labs.
okay, I
I've
just
got lab tests on gapsprotocolhelp.com. If somebody
Mhm,
wants to go to order their own, I've set it up where you can just go order your own labs
mhm.
because some people need to see that. Some people need
Yeah.
to prove to see that. But I'm going to be honest with you, in all my years of being in practice with all the hundreds of thousands of people that I've worked with, I think I've probably only recommended they get tested maybe 4 times,
Hmm.
literally. It's
Hmm.
it's not something that I see as the resolve. And I'm seeing a lot of people coming into my office now. I need to hold off on my appointment for a little bit because I just went to my doctor who ordered $2,000 worth of test, and now the insurance company's not paying for it because they're elective.
Hmm.
So now you've got to pay that $2,000 out of pocket. So I'm
Now they
seeing a
can't come see
whole,
you,
yeah. Mhm.
which is what would have really helped them. Okay, so I have another question about when we start to transition in like deeper into gaps and we start
Mhm.
introducing things like lentils and navy beans and things like that. If we're sprouting them or fermenting them properly, do we and our child is thriving, do we need to worry about limit consumption with these things?
That's a really great question. You have to remember that in this kind of a situation, 85% of our food intake should really be the meats, yolks, organ meats, animal fats, vegetables. So really look at those kind of things as your 15%. Your fruits, your nuts, lentils, your beans, 15% of your total intake.
Okay.
So the worse somebody's situation is in their body in terms of nutrient density, the more pale their skin is, the more dark circles under their eyes, the more lethargic, the more they just can't think. They're underweight, under height, teeth aren't growing back in, whatever their situation, they're just not getting better. We need more nutrient density in
Mhm.
that kind of environment.
I agree with that because what I find a lot is that when moms make it to full gaps, or if they start at full gaps, and
Mhm,
we have again kind of repeating before, got to keep the main things the main things. It's so easy to do the
mhm,
almond flour and the fruit and the honey and all these
mhm,
other things, and I'm like, look, that should only just be a small part of it. So
mhm,
even when we're at even like through life is what you're saying, right? We want to
mhm.
still keep these nourishing foods is through life.
You got it. You got it, Star. And you're doing such a great job with folks here that they need to know these kind of things. I was talking to a client in Peru the other day who's 93 years old, and she straight up said that there's a saying in Peru that if you stop eating, you die. So I know I just need to keep eating. If you keep eating, you live. So the more you put that nutrient density into your body, and I thought to myself, gosh, I've never heard that before, but that's
Yeah.
pretty profound. The more you nourish the body, the more you get better.
And the way that we eat in this country is equivalent to not eating because we're
It's
not
true.
nourishing ourselves. And that's
Yeah,
why we're so sick. We can eat
that's
all
a,
food in the world.
it's a really good point. And then at the same time, if you're doing things that are anti-nutrients, sugar strips your magnesium and all kinds of other things, microwaves kill the food. It's equal to eating cardboard. All these kind of things, if you're doing these anti-nutrient type things in your body, it's robbing you. You're eating food, but you're robbing your nutrition instead of giving your nutrition. That's why we're often hungry so often. It's why we often eat so much more than we need to eat. And that's also why we're very addicted to certain foods because you're literally acting like a drug addict because it's feeding those pathogens in your body.
Well, in your personal opinion or experience, do you find that there's anything going on in the world right now that's the main culprit? Is it, the air and what they're, doing to our air? Is it more our food? Is it the the dirty, what you said, the
Mhm.
dirty electricity? Do you think that
Mhm.
if you were to say this is the big one, avoid this big one,
Mhm.
what do you think it is?
Right now, the big one would be stress.
Oh,
This is an enormously stressful time. People are getting more and more strapped for money. I'll be honest with you, I get the never any ham to make a specific Russian dish, solyanka, with cabbage and apples and carrots and the ham from Aldi's, never any. And it's always been $4. My husband went and picked up the package the other day, $11. I mean, there's only so much of you can take of this, and everything's getting increasing and pinching gas prices, everything, what's going on with our country, what's going on with nuclear wars, what's going on, this, that. Am I going to have to switch to an electrical car? I can't afford to get a new car. Is that going to even make it? You know, there's so many different things right now that there's never been a time that I'm aware of that has been so stressful in people's lives, which brings us back to the breathing to calm that whole nervous system back down again. That is major. Turn off the news. You don't, whatever is happening is going to happen whether you're watching it or not. Don't pay attention, even if it's a good news source. Maybe once in a while you can go back in again, but give yourself like a week off. Let it just happen. You're not in control of it anyways. Relax your system. Let that be okay. Go outside. Let that fill your body and take those deep breaths as much as you can. That's the biggest thing today.
That's profound. That's really, really good advice because one of the things that we stress out about is it's not pasture raised. This, I couldn't get this organic, or, the organic was $8 and the regular's $4, so to know that it's actually the
Hmm.
stress of worrying about those things that's worse than actually
Hmm. You're
just
right.
making a decision that you can afford and you can do and just
Yeah.
eat it in
You're
blessing, as
you're
Monica.
100% right. You know, there's a whole lot to be said about guilt. When you are eating and you're feeling guilty, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I want it. I want a treat. It's my birthday, whatever. You know, that guilt is putting you into the sympathetic state. You're not going to be able to digest that. So just leave it aside. There's actually one of the studies that they did with the breath work is they took 2 minutes before every meal and just focused on the breath work. And they saw people that were actually allergic to the foods, not allergic to the foods if they did the breath work before they ate it. It's very, very, very powerful and effective.
Well, I always say I want to do that, and I don't really do it consistently, but you're encouraging me to.
Yeah. It's something you have to be very, very intentional with. Set an alarm on your phone, especially if you're first getting into the rhythm of
Mhm.
it, and make those specific things that you do on a regular basis. That's my time to breathe. I'll be honest with you, one of my things that's helped me the most is I have a little Havanese dog. She's our office dog. And if I'm ever working on my computer, she will come and lie right into the crook of my hip. And if you notice dogs or animals in general, right when they're falling asleep, they do a big right before they fall asleep. And every
Mhm.
time I hear her do her, I will do it myself. So, you know, it's really a very natural thing that we are so busy that we can't do.
And so
And
stressed and in
it
fight
does,
or
it's,
flight.
you're constantly a wound top and you cannot function properly.
Okay. Okay. This is a really good one, especially when it's about chia seeds. And I want to see what you have to say. So it says if we soak our nuts or our seeds, do we need to rinse them afterwards to wash off the anti-nutrients? And then if so, how would we do that for like a chia or flaxseed? And I'll start with that because there's another part to the question. But
So usually for chia seeds or flax seeds, in the gap stage by stage with recipes, Dr. Aktasha asked me to put this in there very specifically. So you would actually take those and cover them with kefir. That's the best way to do chia seeds or millet or oats when you're in the coming off gaps stage. So chia is going to be more of a full gaps kind of a thing. So you would not rinse those because you would
okay.
just consume them. You've basically made a porridge out of it.
Hmm. Okay.
But if
That's
you're doing like a beans, like the navy beans or the lentils, yeah, I would rinse those.
and the rice and things like that.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. I thought the same thing and I said the same thing, but I was like, oh, I hope I'm saying the right thing. Because how do
Mhm.
the concern was, is that gel that's around the chia seed, is that full of anti-nutrients?
The gel itself is not. The mucilaginous of it is not full of anti-nutrients. But if you have a certain depth of damage, it's going to feed pathogens.
Right.
That's why it's a more full gaps food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
that mucil, the same with aloe, same with slippery elm bark, same with chicory root. These are going to actually, if you've got that mucilaginous activity in your digestive flora with a declined status, and you've got a blooming overgrowth of pathogenic yeast, for example, yeast is a house cleaner. It's going to come clean it up if you don't have the flora to process it yourself.
I'm glad that you said that because there's a lot of things that come up in the group that are asked and they're not in the book. They're not in gaps. They weren't in my training. And I start to feel like, oh, geez, I don't want to, I want to know, but I can't know everything. And
Yeah.
it seems like some things, well, that seems good. It does this, it does that. But do you think that in the early stages, if your child like is actively with juvenile arthritis, working with a rheumatologist, all that. Do you think that it's wise at all to deviate with extra, foods that maybe aren't mentioned? Or do you suggest, because of things like that, that maybe I wouldn't be aware of, just to
It
stick?
it depends on the person. And actually that was the same problem that I had when I was going through it. I'll be honest with you, when I did gaps, I wasted so much time because I wasn't finding it. The books, the yellow book, the blue book are so very powerful, so very packed full of information. Yet I spent 3 years doing it wrong
Mhm.
because there's a lot of variety of what's going on in there. I was making bone broth instead of meat stock, and that's why I started writing about it. Because I thought to myself, well, number one, I can immediately just have my own recipe box on here, and I can just look it right back up myself. It's actually turned out to be the biggest blessing because my kids just learned how to cook off of the recipes on there. Mom, I want to make a such and such. How do I do it? Nourishing plot, such and such, and that's how you get it. But that's where I started putting together the book. So it's about a 10-year study of pulling individual questions out of Dr. Natasha from things my clients were telling me, things I was experiencing myself, things people were doing on social media and asking over and over and over to really take the 10, 12 pages out of the yellow book, out of the blue book, and really expand them into details of why and look for this and this builds this so it can do that. So hopefully that can clear that up for people so that they're not doing it wrong. But in terms of can you be on intro and add in chia seeds? It depends. So what actually happens is some people have to stay just intro because they cannot have more advanced foods that are going to feed the pathogens, which is going to cause more inflammation. But other people, if they do too strict of intro, it kills too much of the pathogens. Their body can't get it out, and they're in a world of hurt. So they need to be doing more higher advanced stages while they're doing intro foods. So it just depends on the person and their situation. A couple things you want to be mindful of is when you eat the food, look for a reaction afterwards. And it's usually going to be 20 minutes after you eat the specific food. But you can also have a delayed reaction that could last up to 3 weeks' time. And that usually happens because the detoxification channels are shut down. You feel really good after you consume the food. It's helping your body and it's pushing the garbage out, but it can't leave. So you reabsorb the toxicity, and that's a delayed reaction.
Mhm.
And remember that it's still only 15% of the intakes of the foods. And then also look for, am I acting like a drug addict with this food? Am I laying there in bed and all I can think about is the apple sitting in the counter, the chocolate cake that's a GAPS approved cake, but all I can think about is chocolate cake, chocolate cake, chocolate cake. Whatever your situation is, if it owns you like a drug addict and you just want more and more and more and more of it, then it's feeding the yeast. So you've got to keep those things in mind and do what your body can actually handle and happen in a beneficial way.
Mhm.
Misspoke there.
No, that's great. And so with that, with the which happens all the time, is that we create the die off, and and the inflammation is, creating all these toxins, and trying to come out of the body. Do you just, aside from Epsom salt baths, do you recommend they do an enema every day, even if they have regular bowel movements?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. The more toxic you are, the more garbage is going to get out.
Mhm.
But if it's a child, you've got to go with what the child feels. It's one of those things where if you're moving your bowels and you still feel like there's something there, you feel like you're never fully evacuating, or there are some days where you don't move your bowels, or there's some days where it's like rabbit pellets and you're just not getting that all out, not fully evacuating, you should minimally be moving your bowels 1 time a day minimum, and it should be ample. And multiple times a day is actually optimal. And if you're not getting those things out, you're reabsorbing those toxins. And anytime you have inflammation in your body, like JIA, you are going to actually be causing different pathogens to be very comfortable in your body because they thrive in inflammatory states. Metals will settle wherever there's inflammation. Parasites will go there. This is a beautiful community where they've got free TV, they're bringing you beer, they've got football on, and you're popping peanuts. You don't need to leave because it's the whole community together. And that's that inflammatory action that's going on in your joints. So if you are feeding those kind of things, you're constantly spinning the wheels. So it really just depends on the person specifically in terms of what's happening.
As far as an enema goes, is there a threshold you wouldn't go over with a young person as far as is there too much? Can you do too much?
Yeah. Enemas are one of those kind of things where um, you can do too much. You know, the Gerson protocol, Max Gerson, he actually said to do 5 enemas a day. And in gaps, if we did 5 enemas a day, sometimes that's fantastic. But also at the same time, we can strip some of our nutrients. That's less going to happen on gaps because we've got such nutrient dense foods, but we can still throw off our electrolytes and you get muscle cramps and all kinds of other issues. So it really just depends on the situation. For the great majority of people, it should just be 1 enema a day.
Okay.
If somebody's got things like chronic headaches, migraines, and they do multiple enemas a day and it takes them away, that's usually coming from the toxicity in the bowel. But usually 1 enema a day is totally fantastic and fine. You know, historically, it's one of those things where they would do it if you got sick, if you got a tummy ache, if you couldn't go to school, if you've got gas, you do an enema to clean that kind of a thing out. When we've got somebody who's got a situation with their joints and they're very, very toxic in their body, and they are moving their bowels every day, there's still a lot of this extra garbage in the rest of the area of their body, specifically in those joints. If we move extra garbage out of the fecal matter, out of the bowel, all that extra garbage in the body can now come into the bowel to push it out again the next day. So when your body gets more and more declined in terms of overloaded garbage, extra toxicity, which there's never been a time in history where people have been as poisoned from their environment as we are right now. And as you're processing all those toxins and you get overloaded, your body just can't handle it anymore and it puts it on the shelf, and then more comes in and it puts it on the shelf. Well, now you've got your liver full, you've got your intestines full, you've got the shelves full, and your body just can't take it. And that's usually the situation where somebody's got this joint situation. So
Mhm.
now when we pull that garbage out, the stuff can come down off the shelves, and then we pull that out, and now we can pull the inflammation stuff out of the tissues. And the more we keep getting that out, 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 out on a regular, consistent basis, the less toxic we are. So look at the signs and symptoms of the body. Does the child get angry, irritated, anxiety, and then they poop and then they're better? That would be a sign that I would do enemas. Does the person have dark circles under their eyes? They poop and it goes away. Do they not poop every single day? Are they rabbit pellets every once in a while? Do they feel like they have not fully evacuated? Then yes, I would absolutely get more out if you can. If the child just can't stand them and they just it causes them anxiety. It's throwing them into the sympathetic nervous system state of and that lasts in their body for a longer period, it's not worth it. I would work on the breathing and do the other things, higher doses of animal fats, even just drinking olive oil to get the stools flushing out, higher magnesium, higher amounts of vitamin C, higher amounts of water to get things flowing out, sour cream, Cascara sagrada, which is an herb that actually pulls from the leaves. It pulls fluid into the bowel so it can slip right out. Slippery elm as a tea, smooth move tea from traditional medicinals, any of those other tricks and tools to get them slipping out on their own. We don't want the child upset about the situation because it's putting them into a state where their body cannot recover.
Oh, so my moms are going to be so happy. It's there's some children that are resistant. They would love to do it, but their children are resistant. That was really,
Oh,
really
yeah. Yeah,
thank
my son, he was 4.5 and he was autistic, ADHD, bipolar, hypoglycemic, and dyslexic.
you.
And this was when the Gaps book had just came out. We had not heard about it. Nobody knew about it at the time. And I was praying and watching his behaviors and came down to full Gaps foods. If we ate food the way God made them and we cooked them that way, he
Mhm.
was normal. He lost all of his diagnoses in the first year. Then when I found her book 3 years later, I was like, ah, That's why. That's why. And that's why I kept digging into gaps because it made 100% sense what she was talking about. She was right. In terms of what did we do? He recovered on full gaps and
Mhm.
he's never done an enema his whole entire life. He's
Okay.
21 now. In terms of do you absolutely have to recover? Not necessarily. It depends on the person. Let's
Right.
do what fits for you and not cause more stress.
Yeah, my daughter's 19, and I just wonder, in just this short decade from then, do you think, I mean, I don't know, I just feel like they have it harder. I feel like they're getting
Mhm.
pound, like, these younger kids are getting pounded.
You are right.
Okay,
Yeah.
not just in my head.
Mm-mm. No,
It's
it's not just in
like,
your head. There's never a time more polluted.
because we did, we went through the stages. We did full gaps. I did bone broth, not meat stock. And in six
Mhm.
months, like, and now and it's just seeing this next generation of kids come up. It just seems like there's so many more with challenges and they seem more complicated.
Yeah, we actually have seen that happen progressively over time.
Mhm.
So I have two children. One is 22 and the other one is 21. They're 17 months apart. In terms of how they've progressed in school, we homeschooled. And my older child, whenever we did events for school environment, school things, there was never any allergies. There was one boy who had an anaphylaxis to soy. But my child that was my autistic child, 17 months later, his school, no soy, no wheat, no peanuts, no nuts, no this, no that, in that little short bit of time. So now imagine all these kids now, because all of us moms who have a depleted flora, if our flora is like this and we're pregnant, that's what we're giving to our children. But if our flora is like this and we're pregnant, that's what we're giving to our children. And now the body thinks this is normal. And as you keep aging and feeding the body properly, it's going to constantly think this is normal and it's going to want to keep coming back to this. That's why we put in the probiotic foods, especially from a very early stage, even if it's the teeny tiny microscopic pin drip, so that we can train the bacteria how to behave so things can function and the body can get better and just keep moving on as the person can handle it. So you just have to know it has been getting worse. We are getting worse because there's less flora being handed down. There's more toxins in our body. They're finding forever chemicals. They're finding chemicals that have been banned since the 70s in the bloodstream. They're now finding plastics in people's bloodstream. They're finding plastics in your lungs. Come on. Imagine what it's going to be like for your child's children.
Ugh.
I mean, we're in a horrible position. We really have to do our best. If you can, get land, have your own animals, clean everything up as much as you possibly can, and it's going to show. It's going to totally show.
And that generation for sure. I hope that what we're doing with our kids and teaching them a lot of the cutest things that some of them say, and you just see that they get it, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how they're going to raise their kids. Last night, off topic, but we were talking with our kids. We were like, well, what do you look for in a mate? When you get older, they're teenagers, and we were having a good talk and going around, and my son goes, "Do they vaccinate their children or not?" I was like, "Oh, my son." Like
Yeah.
it's just
My
funny that it rubs off on them and it
It
becomes
does.
what they want. So I'm not just saying
Yeah.
that people shouldn't do that, but just
Yeah.
that with this, that these children are embracing this and they're going to teach that to their kids, and I love that.
It's so funny because my kids both independently came to me because they were both in college when COVID happened and all the vaccines were coming out. And they both independently at different times came to me in the kitchen and said, how am I going to find a wife now? Because everybody was getting the COVID vaccine. I'm like, they'll rise to the top. You'll find them. Don't worry. God always provides. It's just going to happen. It's going to be good.
Yeah,
Things always come back to normal.
yeah,
The market goes way too high overinflated and then it comes back to normal. And this is the same exact thing. People have been going away from natural medicine and they now realize that this is not working. The medicines, it comes back to more normal.
I
So
hope I hope
yeah,
so. It's being suppressed, so
yeah,
we hope so. It's where you
yeah,
can tell it's where people are rising to and what they want, but whether or not
yeah,
they'll get it, because we just keep doing what we're doing and all the moms that we're working with, they keep on, pushing
yeah.
it and spreading it. So here's a question about cured meats. If they're like it's how do you feel about like deli meats, cured meats, bacon, salami? Do you find really quick, do you think that there's a difference if they're raw as opposed to cooked? And is there anything that they could be cured in that would be acceptable?
Yes, very hard to find. You're better off doing it self. I've actually got 10 pounds of salami sitting in my basement refrigerator right now, curing. So in terms of actually what can you look for that is actually okay, it's the ingredients that they add into it that's the problem. The nitrates, the nitrites, the MSGs, the different additives that cause problems are the issue. So in terms of deli meats, you'd be hard pressed to find one that doesn't have things. Think of the animal. If you went out and you got a turkey and you processed that turkey and you've got the meat, is it going to look like this big slab of meat that they're slicing? No, they've done something. They've conglomerated that together. And look at the other ingredients. Ask for the other ingredients that are in there. Boar's Head is going to be your best brand in terms of deli meats, but even only one thing at Boar's Head is actually clean. And I think it's a chicken thing. I can't even remember. It's been so many years that I've actually tried it. But in terms of cured meats like bacon and things like that, watch for the nitrates and the nitrites. Watch for the other chemicals that you can't pronounce and sugars. Watch for those. And you can just get pork belly and you can cook pork belly. You can put it on a cookie sheet. That way you get more fat. Salt, pepper. It's going to taste just like bacon. It's going to be just fine. You can also get uncured. There's now keto bacons, there's paleo bacons that are going to be more clean, and those are going to be fantastic. Now, if you cure it with celery powder, it has a natural processed cure in it at the end, but that's not adding nitrates or nitrites to the mix. That's part of the natural cure process. The same way when you ferment vegetables, mannitol, which is a sugar alcohol, is part of something that develops in there. But if you're eating mannitol, sugar alcohols, it's not going to be good for your flora. In terms of things like sausages, salamis, prosciuttos, anything that's more naturally cured, and there's a lot of people online, YouTube channels, that are doing them the most proper way. The ones that I have in our basement right now is from ground pork from our pigs in the backyard. And it's got salt, pepper, different seasonings, and red wine, dry red wine. That's the cure. And it prevents the bacteria from growing. So you can find it absolutely. You really have to look. Nick's Sticks is clean. There's a couple of others that are clean. I can't remember the other names of them right now. But just watch, read the labels, read the labels, read the labels, read the labels, read the labels.
Okay, thank you. And so celery salt, if it says a lot of them nowadays, they say no nitrates, and then
Mhm.
the ingredients are very minimal. Celery salt would be the curing. You'd say that's acceptable for.
Absolutely. One of the things you want to totally avoid, and you're probably not going to see this, but you could in deli meats and you could in things like turkey bacon, is transglutaminase. Transglutaminase is a meat glue, which they put together to actually glue it together. You can actually take cuts of meat that are like the sub-level cuts, the lower levels, and then put like a thing of saran wrap and put your meats in there that you've sprinkled with the transglutaminase, stirred it all together, roll it up into the saran wrap, tie it together, put it in the refrigerator, and it comes out looking exactly like a loin, the higher cut. And they slice it and can't tell that transglutaminase is in there. They cook it. Even the high-ranking chefs cannot tell that it's in there. There's nothing that they tell them as is a problem with it. But whenever they find cancer tumors and they look at the center of cancer tumors, they have found transglutaminase in there. So it's one of those things where you've got to keep watching for those ingredients. Those things have to be listed in the label, but also you are best off looking at how it would be raised out naturally. And if you process it that way, does it now look that way?
Mhm.
And just pay attention. So you can't get a turkey and slice it anywhere and find a piece that looks like turkey bacon.
Right, that's true. Yeah. So I wanted to circle back really quick because you had mentioned a website, I think it belonged to yours, a Nourishing Tradition, or somewhere that moms could go to get more information from those. You said like this is in the yellow book and these are the pages in the blue book and this expounds on that. Can you say what that is one more time?
My blog is Nourishing Plot, which
Okay.
has now all been transferred over onto my website,
Okay.
gapsprotocolhelp.com.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information there for free. Anything that you have a question on, kefir, look up Nourishing Plot, kefir. When we transferred it over, it's still in the process.
Mhm.
When we've transferred it over, you can't just look in Nourishing Plot kefir and it pulls up all the kefir things. Unfortunately, you put in Nourishing Plot something and it takes you to the GAPS protocol help. Then you have to put it into the search bar. So she's fixing it. I'm clueless with this kind of stuff, so I just
Beautiful.
am at
That's
the mercy.
wonderful because yeah, we got off we talking about something else, but when you had said that, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I want the moms to know if they don't already know
Yeah.
there and
You can get lost for months and get so much information there.
good thing. Okay, I know we're coming low on time. I have two, but maybe we just have time for this one more. Is there any kind of specific exercise or routine that you think is the most suggested and complements gaps healing the most? My mom who asked, she's got her kids doing yoga now. What do you think?
Mm. Yoga actually started off as just breath work.
Hmm.
That's what yoga was. As a matter of fact, if you go to, I didn't know this, my kids just told me that you can get audiobooks on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube audiobooks, Yogi, who is the guy that started yoga, has a book that's an audiobook read that you can just listen to, and you can listen to it at, because we're going back into that go, 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 go. You can listen to it at twice the pace or half the
Oh,
pace to listen to it to get through it faster. But that's what yoga originally was. And then they started thinking, well, if we start moving this way, can we open the lungs and get more breath? And now it's turned into these motion type things. You can absolutely do that. But remember, it all did start as breath work. So that's where I would put that focus on, is breath work. Sometimes it can help, but sometimes if you've got somebody with a joint issue, if you are bending incorrectly, or if it's the incorrect move for the person at the time, it can cause you more pain and problems.
hmm. But you would suggest though with JIA, I'm hoping because I'm hoping you mirror what I say, but that they should be moving. You
If
know,
it's not hurting you, yes.
right. We don't
Because
want to let it.
those pathogens, you are 100% right, Star. The pathogens are going to settle where there's inflammation in the knee joints or the ankle joint. And if you are moving around, you are moving the pathogens out and through the body so they can get out. But then you sit because you're in pain. And what's the first thing that happens when you first stand up again? You're like, oh, you're 100 years old, because the pathogens have come back and settled in that space. So yes, you are 100% correct.
Okay, just want to make
But
sure
make
it's
sure you're not causing more damage.
not causing more damage, not overextending. But even if there's some, even you don't want to hurt yourself, but you don't want to be like, oh, I'm in
Do
pain.
the movement, do the movement in a way that it doesn't cause you pain.
Do what
Yeah.
you right.
Yeah.
Swimming maybe, but then chlorine.
Chlorine and honestly, walking, biking, kayaking, these things that are low pressure, low
Mhm.
impact, this is going to be very powerful. Lifting weights, as long as it's not causing you pain.
Mhm. Like bands, because we had somebody come on and teach some exercises with some bands that could.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing that you want to be really super concerned with is that, is this something this person would normally do on a regular basis? Do they love it? Like, a
Mm.
kid is going to like bike riding, and that's getting the legs moving and moving circulation. You've got to be very, very careful that on the bike, that the knees are not going further forward than the toes,
Mhm.
because you're ripping different tissues in the knees. So you've got to watch the bike. You got to make sure that when you extend the bike down, you're almost straight and the knee is never pushing further forward than the toes. We see that problem all the time, and people are actually causing knee problems even if they don't have JIA. So you want to watch those movements, but that's going to keep things moving out of their body. So if you want to do the bands, if you want to do the yoga, do what works for you. That's fantastic. But what is the child like? What is the child into? Is this something they're going to do on a regular basis because they love it? You know, I had one kid who would literally dig a hole in the backyard and then just fill it back in again.
And that was his movement. That's
Yeah,
yeah, do what you like, right?
whatever you like. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Becky. This
Do you
interview,
have another question you want to hit?
let me see. It was okay. What are the daily musts once we reach full gaps? What do we need to make sure we are getting in every single day?
85% of the foods are those foods we mentioned, the nutrient
Mhm.
dense foods, fermented foods in rotation, whatever you want, breathing, outside, fermented cod liver oil for your vitamin D. You know, they did studies with people before COVID and during COVID and found if you had a vitamin D level of 50 or above, you did not get sick. So having those D levels up now that we're entering into winter, just focus on those things, keeping the stools moving, sleep, your basics,
Wonderful.
movements.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So if it's okay, maybe to see if anybody has a question for you.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
questions
run through it.
came
Let's.
from the moms, but it's possible maybe after talking. Does anybody have a question? And I can open up the let me do this. I am going to maybe take us off of Spotlight. This is where, oh, remove Spotlight. Okay. And then I'm going to remove your Spotlight too. And maybe I'm going to remove your Spotlight. I don't know. Well, you're Spotlight right now.
Sorry.
No, no, I have it on gallery. Okay, if anybody wants to, does anybody have a question for Becky before we log off? Then you can just ask it. You don't need to put it in the chat or anything like that. I guess that's a no. You answered all their questions, Becky. Thank you so much for coming
It's
on.
my pleasure. I'm looking forward to next month, and I'm looking forward to these kids getting better.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, I'll talk to you
My
soon.
pleasure.
All right,
Good to see you
bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.